Hi, everyone. This is Derek Harp, the founder and chairman of the Control Systems Cybersecurity Association International, or as we call it, just CSA. CSA is a 501c6 nonprofit workforce development association dedicated to helping grow, support, and sustain the professionals charged with the cybersecurity of control systems. We're specifically talking about those systems that have pumps and valves and actuators, real cyber to physical moving parts, and control nearly every aspect of our modern connected industries. Thank you for tuning into the podcast. It is my hope you find it inspirational or motivating or revealing or informative, and perhaps at times even a little entertaining. Take care and be well.
Hey, this is Derek Harp, founder and chairman of CSA and the host of the CSA podcast show. And I've got another great industry leader interview for you today. I've got Michelle Balderson, the principal security architect at Issquared. And if you don't know Michelle, in addition to being an industry, longtime industry contributor and participant leader, she is a technologist. She is a mother, a wife, a partner, a chef, a jack of all trades, a master of some, security specialist for sure, and an outdoor enthusiast, hiker, camper, 4x4. Welcome to the show, Michelle.
Oh, thank you very much for having me, Derek. It's wonderful to be here. I'm so glad that we're doing this today.
Yeah, me too. We've talked about it off and on for a while, and I'm glad we're both getting together today to do it. And as we both already acknowledged, it'll be some of these are. I do a lot of these. Some are fun, some are a little harder than others. This will be fun. I already know that.
Oh, I hope so.
I'm sure that it will be. I know your personality is great. So we'll have a chat and talk about the Michelle Balderson journey, professional journey, and how you ended up here. So you probably know from my format, there's some things I always do, which is I go back and say the superhero joke about security people are modern day superheroes, and all superheroes have to have backstories. So where did you come from?
Well, I was born in Toronto, in Canada, so I'm Canadian. Whenever I meet new people, I always try to tell them that I moved 22 times by the time I was 20 years old, and I'm not sure if that number is anywhere near accurate, Derek. Right?
But it sounds great. It's a great soundbite.
Yeah, it's a good soundbite. So, born in Toronto, moved to Chicago, moved to Richmond, Virginia. Lived in Richmond, Virginia for a few years. I still love absolute Richmond, Virginia for sure. And then my parents moved back to Canada, another stop in Toronto, moving out west to Winnipeg, Manitoba, Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, and then ultimately Regina, Saskatchewan, where I started to be an adult and decided to move out on my own. And so now as an adult, I think I've moved 44 times and I'm 56 years old. So I moved quite a bit in my life.
Now that early profile that usually matches to a handful of things, and the one that comes to mind oftentimes is the military families that get moved around all over the place. That was a lot of places a young person to be moving to. What was the reason for that?
My dad was a controller and an accountant, and he worked for some big brand names that we may all know, like Rockwell International, which there's the space shuttle project and things like that at the time in the 70s, and he was doing accounting, and then as that occurred, he changed and moved multiple different positions and multiple different companies over the course of years. And so we saw ourselves moving. It felt like, to me as a kid, it felt like every 6 months. But I think the key thing there, Derek, is that it allowed me to be able to develop my personality in such a way that, hey, I got to be able to immediately have rapport with people because I need friends. And that's been able to translate into my work quite well. And as you know, you and I have a very good connection together. And I think it's because of that past history in my life, for sure.
And we'll get to it, but not to fast forward. You kept moving because you were in sales roles with different companies and different territories. Is that?
Yeah, when Regina, Saskatchewan, I looked at it from the perspective of opportunity, and I wanted to be in information technology, and I didn't see the opportunity there in Regina, so I decided to move out to Vancouver, British Columbia, and started to build my career there. Then realized that Toronto is the center of universe in Canada, and so therefore then made a conscious decision to move back to Toronto, but absolutely detested it. I'm sorry to the people in Toronto. It's just not my place that I want to live. I was born there, so I absolutely love and respect Toronto. But with that is that I've moved quite a bit myself as an adult, and then eventually, as I've settled down, I've lived near Calgary, Alberta, for the last 25 years of my life, and truly have settled down.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask you whether there were any more moves ahead, but you found a place that you enjoy. That's cool.
The moves ahead for me, Derek, is that my ultimate goal is to be off grid, and then at that point, I'm not sure where my off grid property will be, but I just want to be off grid.
Yeah. Yeah. Super. Very, very cool. Well, so let's talk about when technology intersects with your life. Is how early was that? I mean, for some people, it's they're born into it as like dad's bringing home machinery or computers. And I'm taking it apart and I'm soldering stuff. And other people are like, yeah, I went to college and did this and did that. I didn't do anything with a computer until I was 30. What's your when did technology bump into you?
Well,
Or vice versa?
the first experience for technology for me is that my brother is a much he's much more of an engineering technologist than I am. And in 1981, he bought a ZX81 from Sinclair Corporation and bought it directly from the UK mail order. And he had the option of either buying it fully, completely assembled, or buying it in parts. And he decided to do it from parts perspective. And so I was just a little kid at the time, and I learned how to do basic programming on the ZX81, and that's when, for me, the technology sparked my interest in computers. With that, I've always looked up to my brother, and he's always played a central theme in the direction and where in the decisions that I've made in my life. And so he's one of my mentors. He's been able to always been there for me. And so with that is that I wanted to go into different careers, but ultimately gravitated towards technology because my brother was is a big technologist.
Yeah, that's so. I mean, did you harbor some ideas of what you wanted to do? I mean, what was that migration from being in?
I wanted to be a chef.
Hmm.
And in the decisions, for me, it was more of a financial decision than anything, which is I didn't think that I would ever be a really good chef, like one of those
Celebrity chefs.
world class chefs. And my brother tried to convince me that I would be a very good salesperson. And at the time, my brother, I'm like, Andy, I'm like completely introverted. I am turtled. I can't talk to people. I won't pick up the telephone. And you're saying that you think I'm going to make a good salesperson, right? So from a technology perspective, it's just that he led me down the technology path, and honestly, I'm very, very happy with it because I was able to garner a very good life, to date, and make some really good money, and then improve my skills from the perspective of being able to have interpersonal skills with people. I did not want to lose the love of one thing, whether it would be either losing the love of being a chef and a cook, or losing the love to technology. And I decided that worst comes to worst, if everything becomes difficult, I could lose my love of technology, but I will always still love my cuisine. And we all have to eat, so we all want to love cuisine, right?
Yeah, and chef was in my my opening one word
Yeah,
monologue for you.
yeah.
It's something you do. You just don't make your living doing it, but it's something you do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's something I do now. My partner and I have been together for several years. His name is Farron, and he does all of the cooking in the house. Today, he's chosen that role, so I get to appreciate really good cooking, even though I'm not cooking myself now.
Wait, so you could do dueling chefs there because if you both
We
have
could.
passion for it.
We, we could, and he's recently decided that he wants to become a hacker, so we could be dueling from the perspective of technologists as well. So
There
it'd
you
be
go.
interesting to see.
There you go. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so what's first? I mean, although let's unpack something you said because I think it's interesting. I'm always looking
Okay.
for the golden nuggets, in these discussions. Someone who self-describes themselves as introverted and you go into sales. I mean, that there might be people listening who are like, oh gosh, they might say what you said. I couldn't go into sales. You did. So what was it? What was it that your brother saw in you if that was your natural inclination wasn't to be connecting and talking to lots of people? And you've done a whole career now of sales, really, roles. What was that bridge? And he was right about something. I mean, clearly that's
Well, I think if my brother was envious of me in any way, shape, or form, it was because of the fact that I was the kid in the playground that had all of the friends around them, and yet is still heavily introverted, and I think the key thing here is that there is no natural extrovert, there's no natural introvert. I think we're all somewhere in the middle, or somewhere from one side to the other that we lean, but we have to push ourselves into being extroverts. And for me is that living requires us to be able to sell ourselves. And so by moving into sales, it allowed me to be able to open myself up. And when you get me into different settings, if you get me into a technology setting, I'll be more than happy to talk about technology all day long, because it spins my propeller, right? I have a propeller that hits the floor from a knowledge perspective and love of technology. But if you start to talk to me about other things that I'm not as comfortable with, you'll start to see the introversion come very, very clearly, where I start to reflect back. Now, one of the things about selling to me is that the best sellers are the people who listen. It's not the people who talk. The people who listen and understand the customer needs and understand the business are the people who are going to then come back with the best solutions, whether it be IT or OT, or whether it be the business and working with it. We have to be able to assess and understand how we listen to be able to then give guidance to customers. And so for me, sales became natural because I'm a very good listener, being introverted, and then I have to push myself for extroversion.
That makes sense. There's great power in listening. I think your books I've read and other sales leaders that I've met over the years, that's true. If you're the ones that talk a lot and are slick, that's not necessarily the best.
Well, I call those people that are slick the Teflon man, and nothing sticks to them. People really want to be able to work with people that are down to earth. Yeah. And being introverted, I basically show my emotions. I show the person that I am, and people like working with me because they connect with the person. It's not necessarily the technology that I'm selling; it's the expertise and the knowledge that comes along with me as a package. Yeah. And then the solutioning becomes, oh, well, we like this because there's expertise behind it.
Yeah. Well, what did you do first? What when you decided to take your first job or employment? What was it?
Well, it's interestingly enough is that my brother convinced me to move into sales, and my first job was working for a company called Microdrives Canada. And Microdrives Canada, what I would say with Microdrives Canada is that it's what I'd call Shuckster selling today. And Shuckster selling is it's retail selling. It's being able to find a customer, talk to a customer, determine what their needs are, start doing feature benefit selling to them. Hey, you know what? You need this disk drive because it's 9 milliseconds and it does this and it does that, and then sell and complete the transaction as fast as you possibly can. This was back in the 90s when we weren't really using the internet, and that people were buying hard disk drives at $3,000 a pop type thing. And we were selling not only to companies, but to individuals with small disk drives, like very large physical disk drives, but small capacity disk drives. And so people were spending a good amount of money out of their own pockets to be able to do this. And so it was a matter of working with them and building that instantaneous rapport. And so that job taught me so much, Derek. It taught me how to interact with people and how to communicate with people.
And so that's at this point, sort of obviously we're going to get to where cybersecurity intersects with your career path. This is technology. It's not cybersecurity yet.
No.
Yeah. So as you move through they've all been technology related companies, but at some point cybersecurity gets in, which takes over. I mean, today cybersecurity is specifically not, you have IT cybersecurity background experience, but OT cyber becomes a big thing too. And so we'll get to that as a second component. But I'm just imagining in most career paths, cyber came first. It somewhere came into your career path.
No, cyber didn't come first for me. It was technology and understanding computers. When you think about the early 90s and into the early 2000s, cyber wasn't really on the forefront in the early 90s. It was on the back burner. People weren't really thinking about cybersecurity, and it was because of the fact that we weren't connected to the internet, right? So when I first started, I went from Microdrives Canada into distribution and selling desktop computers through to resellers, along with networking, along with a whole plethora of different vendors. And so for me, I learned as a generalist a lot of different things, and that's where my width comes from the perspective of understanding technology. So for me, it was a storage expertise first, then a wide area from the perspective of understanding the technology space, and then I moved into networking. And from a networking perspective, I worked for D-Link Canada for a period of time, and learned networking and layer 2 networking, and was working with one of the largest telco providers there, where they needed an ADSL modem and a refresh of another vendor's modem. So I worked for a year on building that modem with product management. And so that's where my love of being able to understand the full complete sales cycle was, taking a product from the ground up and selling it to an end user customer in the terms of hundreds of millions of dollars in sales because of selling that type of modem, right? So for me, it was the evolution of the industry. The industry was changing. And then I started to move into cybersecurity after I looked at networking and saying, I think networking is going to be commoditized. And that was in the early 2000s. And in the early 2000s, then I started to move over into cybersecurity companies and started with SonicWall. Back in the day, from the perspective of that, it was firewalls. Well, we need firewalls. So if we connect to the internet, and I saw a lot of customers in the late 90s connect to the internet and not put any protection, and then have all of their machines compromised in one way or another. Therefore, that it made a logical sense for me to move to a firewall company, and that's where my cybersecurity experience started to come through.
Yeah, your years at D-Link, that makes a lot of sense as a great foundation. A lot of people have come on the show and said, if there's one thing, regardless of people's background out there, if they don't have a network, learn how the network works. Because like people ask the question, where do I start? What do I get into? Especially engineers, maybe with no IT and cyber background. Well, everybody should understand fundamentally how the network works. You can go into specializations after that, but really understanding that piece of it is somewhat essential.
I'll refer to myself as a layer 2 bigot from time to time. And what I really mean from that is that my networking background is as strong as my security background. And the really, when we get right down to it, is that networking and security always intersect with each other. Then at that point, we have to start thinking about the machines that we're protecting and the endpoint, and that we have to be able to then understand the application. And whether it be IT or OT, we need to understand the application to be able to understand how we're securing things.
And you go from SonicWall to Fortinet, and you're at Fortinet for a fairly long stay, almost
19 years at Fortinet. At the time, what we were competing against in Fortinet is that we created a platform called UTM, or Unified Threat Management, or when I first started, it was antivirus firewalls. And the reason why is because at the internet gateway at the time, vendors were selling servers and multiple servers to be able to protect big internet gateways at universities, those types of customers, and that they would have 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 servers set up to just simply do antivirus at the gateway for the internet. So Fortinet comes along, has a hardware-based approach where we can simply put a singular appliance, sell a firewall with antivirus on it, and reduce the amount of footprint in the data centers dramatically from the perspective of the amount of space. And so when you get that type of disruption in the market space, that disruptive technology, Fortinet was a wonderful ride. From 2004 to 2022, when I left, I saw a lot of different change in the industry, where we started to see the standardization of next generation firewalls, and then the expansion of all the different security solutions, right? So for me, being able to understand all of those technologies was nice, because it just simply came and graduated over the course of a period of time.
And so you've got the technology layer, you've got then sort of networking layer, and now then SonicWall, you've got security, Fortinet, more security. OT, or operating technology, that comes in somewhere in the middle of the Fortinet years.
Well, actually, it came in on my SonicWall years. Is that
okay.
If we go back in time, prior to working for Fortinet and SonicWall, we focused a lot towards the retail market space, and I focused towards the off-track betting, because I like to be able to focus towards things that my competitors didn't see. And so much of the retail space was actually serially connected to their computers back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and the same thing for off-track betting and casinos and things like that. So SonicWall had a solution that would allow us to be able to do serial to IP conversion. So my first experience, when you start talking about engineering and working in OT, as we call it today. In that space, it was really understanding the interconnection between cyber and physical because of the serial connections, the different types of serial connections. Then when I move into Fortinet in 2004, I started with Fortinet in 2004. I started to build a very good relationship with the CEO and the CTO, and I start screaming from the rafters, we have to start putting in ICS signatures. A very famous name within OT is Dale Peterson. Dale Peterson is running a company called Digital Bond at the time, which is still his company today. And with Digital Bond, what they were doing then, instead of running conferences, he was building ICS signatures for OEMs. And so what we did was going over to Digital Bond and pulling the ICS signatures from him and putting that into the firewall. So I was influential within Fortinet of being able to focus towards that market space. I then had an end user to Fortinet, but a partner to many, called Industrial Defender. Industrial Defender in 2005 I was introduced to, and I ended up being the partner manager for them. And because of the folks at Industrial Defender, Brian Ahern, and others, they really gave me a trial by fire of understanding the OT and the ICS market space. I'm going to stop there, Derek, from the perspective of descriptions, but I can go on further with you from the perspective of my knowledge, because from there, I ended up loving the intersection between cyber and physical.
Yeah.
And then said, you know what, I'm gonna make this my passion. And one of the reasons why is because none of the other security vendors were looking at this at that particular point in time. So it was always nice to work in an area where that nobody else saw.
Yeah. Let's talk about that juncture then, because there may be people listening that, that could make a similar decision. And so you saw this area. Would you still feel to some degree that somebody could make that same decision? Time has passed, but there's still a lot of opportunity in this space. I won't put words in your mouth, but could somebody still say, hey, this is a really interesting area. This everything is encompassed in control systems, OT, cyber to physical, industry 4.0. There's a lot of unmet needs still in this space. That's my fundamental belief, but maybe that's changed. And you're just like, well, and now I'm not sure I'd make the same choice, or no, I love it. And somebody can still, it's a great place for someone to do that.
It's your question is intriguing to me, because there's always an opportunity. If we look at the opportunities in the market space at any given point in time, we can be able to figure out where we might want to be able to take that rocket ship up, right? And with that is that with OT security, I've been in OT security, and to be honest with you, I hate the name OT, but we can pack that into another conversation in a minute or two. But I've been in OT security for 25 years of my life. And with that is that we've been doing the similar security methodologies for 25 years, and that we need to be able to evolve, right? So when you mentioned Industry 4.0, Industry 5.0, in the end is that what we're doing is that we're interconnecting systems, supply chain, all the way through to customer experience, and with that changes the paradigm relative to what needs to be secured and how things need to be secured. So as Industry 4.0 was introduced in 2010, we start seeing companies and operators embrace Industry 4.0, but they don't necessarily understand the risks of doing it. And that's where we start to see the influx of a whole bunch of new security vendors within that. So we're really at the infancy of that adoption for Industry 4.0. So as we move along, I think that there's a huge amount of opportunity. And I think the opportunity right now is to really start to look at security from an enterprise perspective rather than a domain perspective. Today, the vendors are really focused towards the OT domain, the IT domain, and that IT security vendors separate away and solutions to the OT space. But in the end, the answer that we're not answering is, what risk do we have? How do we have risk to the business? And can I continue to operate even though I'm being attacked on my IT side? Therefore, then, OT-specific security solutions make logical sense. IT-security-specific solutions make logical sense. But the overarching management and governance of security needs to be at the enterprise level. And I think that we're not there yet from a technology perspective, from a vendor perspective, from a thinking perspective. And we really need to change that thinking, because when we see breaches, we need to be able to, and I'm talking about the operators now, I'm talking about the OT side, the engineering side, needs to be able to inform the business what the risks are to continue to operate. And I don't believe that we have the tools to be able to do that today.
What you just described, I think that's the people in the know and the smart bet. It's really, that's where things are headed. And there's all kinds of beliefs, and there's still discord in between different parts of the same company and distrust, and every group's going to have to go through an evolution of all that stuff. But in general, fast forward to the future, which is what you were doing, it's like this stuff has to work together, and there has to be common language. And risk is the number one word that I hear the most senior participants in the industry using. Like when I'm talking to the board or I'm talking to a senior executive, we talk about risk. They understand other risks, have for years, and we lay off some risks with different sort of insurance products, and we have a risk portfolio. And this, our area, the area that we're all passionate on working in, is in the risk portfolio. It's not the only risk the company is exposed to, but it sometimes is not very well communicated.
Yeah, and I'm gonna age myself. When I started in the security industry, we used to talk about the 9 P's of security. The industry has shifted it down to the 3 P's of security: people, products, processes. Or processes. Sorry, I need to reframe my thought here for a second. Let's just go back to that answer for a second. When I started in the industry, there was 9 P's of security. What the industry has done now is really brought that down to 3 P's. Most people will hear it as people, process, and technology. People, process, and products. But what we need to be able to do is bring in culture and understanding culture, because when we start talking about the domains of the business are there to be able to deliver the needs of the business and the outcome to the business. The challenge that comes down to it is that each domain has their own rules and their own way of communicating, and that we need to be able to end up having a common language, right? I'm getting tired of hearing about the CIA rule versus the safety availability rules of OT. What we need to be able to do really is bridge the gap between the different domains and being able to educate the domains and cross-train the domains on the values that they bring. And instead of looking at it from the perspective of negativities, look at it from the perspective of what is the output and how are we doing this and how are we servicing the business. And that needs to be driven by the board and the board level and the executive levels within any business to be able to bring that culture together. So as we embrace cultural change and the executives understand that cultural change, because Industry 4.0 is driving that cultural change, then at that point, the people will understand how to work better together. And the reality of it is that no one is to blame. We've segmented the business in the past from the perspective of how we're siloing the business. We're now flattening the business silos, and we're trying to make everybody work together from the perspective of Industry 4.0. We just simply have a period of time where we need to be able to start to work, and I like to use the word empathy. We need to have empathy for other people and understanding from the perspective of their point of view rather than our point of view. Instead of being staunch and rigid from the perspective of how we feel about process, is to think and listen to the other people. And that's, when you started to talk about the being introverted, the introverted tells me that we need to be able to have empathy. And introversion generally comes along with empathy.
And you tied back to the listening quotient part too, which not people have a different quotients of that, and yours is higher than others, and it's valuable in what you described. It's essential. Okay, if I'm going to have empathy, I first listen to what is your mission? What are you trying to accomplish, and how does it work? And what are your constraints? I love what you shared, because I think it's essential to where we go next. Is we build bridges, between all the stakeholders, and we learn common languages, and we learn each other's business, and we respect that there's some great pieces being brought together by different stakeholders. And there's very few true unicorns. I understand everything about the operating environment. I understand everything about cybersecurity. Oh, what the heck, and everything about technology and networking too. And I have all of that in perspective. Whoa, that's not very many people, if anyone.
I think from a cultural, and I like to be able to bring society into this as well, right? From a cultural perspective, right now is that it's easy not to have empathy. It's easy to be able to be closed off and to shell up, because really we're at an intersection with the world where a lot of people are not sure where we're going, and if we're, I don't want to bring war into the equation, but we're at war, right? We are in cyber war. Richard Steinen is a friend of mine, and he wrote a book, There Will Be Cyber War. Well, definitively, we are in cyber war.
I have
right?
it. I have it somewhere. Yeah. I just
And so with that is that we as a society are struggling at this particular point in time. So for many people, it's hard to bring empathy to work. But if we can switch the dynamic, which is Industry 4.0 and Industry 5.0, changes the nature of how we bring products and solutions to the market space, and it improves customer experience. It improves our lives in a dramatic way from the perspective of how we consume products and how we are as human beings. That if we can embrace it within the companies that we are, it makes the companies better, right? And I feel that there's a war between employees and employers at this particular point in time. Corporations are bad, employees are good. Well, that really isn't the case. The employers are really helping us from the perspective of allowing us to live our lives, and that we can, if Industry 4.0 and 5.0 really comes to fruition, we can all have better things because of it. We can be better because of it. So if we can change our mindset from the perspective of being closed off and being static and having blinders on, to being able to use our peripheral vision as individuals, I think we're all better off.
So there's a bunch of threads we can pull here, and I'm going to want to get to a couple of them with the time we've got left. You went to Artorio, you went to Issquared, you're at Issquared. What are you doing there?
At Issquared, I am a pre-sales security expert. What that really means is that I'm developing processes within the company to be able to ensure we're reaching the market space with the right messaging at the right time. Building solutions with our engineering organization to be able to deliver solutions to the market space. We're interesting from the perspective of Issquared. Issquared is digital transformation expertise. We are what a lot of people would classify as a VAR, or a value-added reseller. I moved from a manufacturer, so many people would be like, Michelle, why are you moving to a VAR? This is because what Issquared is doing is that they're in the evolution of moving themselves into a hybrid between that of a VAR and a vendor and a manufacturer, and bringing software products to market along with solutions to the market space, and then along with services and service delivery to the market space. The vendor community right now, the Fortinets, the Ciscos, the Palo Altos of the world, are really trying to figure out how to evolve their product portfolios from hardware into services. And so the VAR opportunity really is being able to take the services that they're already existing and evolving that into solutions. And so with that is that I see this great opportunity of working for Issquared because of the fact that the company has a vision of where they want to go. The CEO is absolutely amazing and wonderful. I've had some personal experiences right now with my son passing, and the company's like, Michelle, you need to take a time off. I was like, I'm going to come back to work right now, and they're like, no, you need to take some time off. And so when you start talking about the evolution of life and work balance, Issquared gives that to me. So for me, when I started at Fortinet in 2004, I saw the rocket ship. I see the rocket ship within Issquared because the nature of the market space is that the customers really, really, truly want solutions that are encompassing consulting, the solution itself, the pre and the post-sales support, along with managed services. So we're at the right time, right place, and that we're growing into that as a company. That's the reason why I made the move.
I think I don't always ask this question, but it's frequently I do, and I think you might be a good person to ask this one. If you're sitting down with your 20-year younger version of you, any advice that you would give if you're sitting across from Michelle, 20, 25 years ago, what would you say now? About
I was going to say with that one is that can I swear? But the first thing I would say is don't be an ass, right? And what I really mean by that is that today's world, in comparison to the world that I started within, as an individual contributor salesperson when I started, I could isolate myself. I could really focus towards my end user customers, and I could just simply bring control to the sales process. Today, it takes a team. And it really, back then, it took a team. I just didn't necessarily have the full, complete awareness of the needs of the team in comparison to the needs of the individual. So I was very much about, I need to absolutely control everything, when in fact that's just an illusion. We need to be able to work with people back and forth, build that rapport, and understand the resources that we need to be able to pull in, and use as many resources as you possibly can to be able to assist customers. For me, I've always been customer focused, and to the point sometimes to the detriment of relationships that I had within the companies that I've worked for. And so there is a point where if you're too customer focused, then at that point you can hurt relationships. I think I would have dealt with those things in a different way if I had the maturity that I have today.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. It's amazing to me. I've done now 100 of these interviews, 105, and there's so many thoughtful. I mean, every single one has yielded a couple of moments that are just powerful or valuable shares that anybody listening could take on board. And those to me seem to be, anybody can apply that sort of thought process to what they whatever role they might have in our ecosystem.
I've always done this in my career, but I think it's very critically important. And there's times where I've missed doing this. But one of the things is to always circle back to other people and appreciate them, and tell them how you appreciate them and appreciate their worth.
You're back to empathy again. I mean, empathy would.
Well, yeah, I'm back to empathy. The key thing for me is that we don't know what's going on within the other people's lives. We all have challenges as human beings. You might be having a hard day. They might be having a hard day. They might be going through something like I just recently went through with absolute tragedy in the loss of my son. It's hard to pull something. It's hard to really input in the way that you need to input when you're going through something like that. And so people are challenged on a regular basis. And so, instead of how are you doing today? What's going on? Start to dig into the personal lives of the people that you're working with, and show them empathy. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Understand them for the characters that they are, and appreciate them, right? Appreciate the differences. Diversity to me is absolutely critical, and we all bring different things to different equations, and we need to be able to value that. That's the reason, like the diversity, if we appreciate diversity of the business that we're dealing with, then those domain problems that we have within IT and OT go away, because we then start to appreciate the differences within the domains.
Yeah, yes, I couldn't agree with you more. And we need how to develop more of what you're describing, not just in our industry, but societally, is probably not going to be an easy thing to do. But if one by one, if those of us that share your views, if we're all work towards that and can recruit one person to think that way, I mean, I guess we grow it from the bottom up.
It also, and many people may disagree with me on this, but turn off social media. Stop the noise of the dissent, right? Because social media itself is just it's an addiction, right? I think that we're in a society of addicted people, and a part of me, I get depressed sometimes, because I think I always looked at technology as, we're going to have technology, and from a security perspective, I always want security to be integrated, right? Security should be by default integrated into everything, and it still isn't today. 30 years later after I started,
an add-on,
right? It's a bolt-on, and the challenge that we have with the addictions relative to social media is that we're all addicted to social media to one degree or another. Many people much more than I am, and the reality of it is that it's distracting us from what we could become and how we could grow as individuals, right? So for me, it's like, shut down social media and stop using it. Now, I went through a period of time where I wasn't on Facebook, as an example, for over 10 years of my life, because I just didn't see the value in it.
Yeah.
We have to be able to look at the applications and things that we're doing as individuals and see the value within them.
Yeah. And I don't want to brush over. I knew before today's conversation that you'd suffered a great loss, and that was heartbreaking to hear. And
the It's taken me a while to get here, and it's going to continue to take it because the loss is going to be with me for the rest of my life. But the key thing for me is to cherish the person who my son was, carry the ideals that he brought into this world. My son's funeral had 250 people at it because he was 18 years old. Because of the nature of the human being that he was, is that interconnect with people and you try to have great relationship with people. Well, Sebastian did that, right? And so when we start thinking about work and what we're doing on a daily basis, we want to get to a point where work just doesn't feel like work. Today, and doing this podcast with you doesn't feel like work, right? It's being able to interact with you and your audience and being able to appreciate how we're influencing others, right? That's, for me, it's the giving back and it's the influencing of others. And Sebastian, I knew that within my heart, but Sebastian really taught me that from the perspective of the value of an individual is what you give, it's not what you get.
Well, I think that's great words to be wrapping up our time together. Thank you for that. I have one more piece. So now comes time for one of my favorite parts of the show, which is the Pivot questionnaire. And so I used to love this show called Inside the Actors Studio. It may still be around, but the longtime host, James Lipton, has passed on. And James Lipton interviewed all the famous actors and actresses over decades. And he ended all of his interviews with this same questionnaire that he borrowed from a French show, hence the name. And he didn't change the words as far as I know. And I've not changed the words. It's the exact same 10 questions. And so if you're up for it, we can end our time with these 10 questions.
Oh, that sounds good to me. Absolutely. Right. Let's do it.
Okay. So what is your favorite word?
I've put some thought to that. Snuffleupagus. And the reason why is because of the fact that I'm a Sesame Street child growing up in the 70s and the 80s. And if I tried to spell it, I wouldn't be able to do it. And Snuffleupagus was invisible to the adults. So that's my favorite word.
What is your least favorite word?
Pretty much any swear word, right? Although it's funny because I use swear words a lot, and I'm accused of using it in business quite a bit. But we don't necessarily need to swear about a whole bunch of different things.
What turns you on, either creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
People, right? Communication, empathy, as there's a pretty big theme there from the perspective of it. I am a people person through and through and through. I just absolutely love people. I want to be able to talk to people. I want to learn. I want to learn from people, and a lifelong learning. That's what really turns me on. And as I'm going through some challenging times in my life right now, I'm reminding myself of that every single day. Is that why do I love technology and why do I love what I'm doing? Is because of the fact that I have to learn every single day, and I'm terrified that when I retire that I'll stop learning, which I know I won't, but it's just a fear. It's a future fear.
What turns you off?
What turns me off? Abruptness, a matter of factness. People who are set in their ways from the perspective of that they're not willing to be flexible or learn. Really, to me, it's probably the greatest cause of my angst in business is when people act that way.
And if there was one, what is your favorite curse word?
Fuck. Probably. Yeah. It's an adjective. It's a verb. You can have action. It's a gerund because you end up having a verb and a noun all together. And I'm not an English major, so whoever is listening to this and I'm messing it all up, it's because of the fact that I'm not good from that perspective.
What sound or noise do you love?
The sound of rain, the sound of thunder. I own a house in Texas and I get to listen to the rain and thunder and lightning and that to me is just absolutely the most wonderful thing in the world.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Chalkboard nails. Although, with the age of the whiteboards, I don't think that we have a lot of chalkboards left, so we don't, that doesn't necessarily resonate. One of the things that I've started to realize is that I used the word Rolodex in a meeting the other day, and the person was like, what's a Rolodex? And I realized, oh, okay, well, I don't own a Rolodex. And then I'm like, a contact list, right? So,
yeah. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I attempted it once in my life, but professional chef. but my retirement plans are to be a stand-up comedian.
What profession would you not like to do?
Garbage man.
And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
What took you so long?
Well, folks, I'm just wrapping up with Michelle Balderson. She is the principal security architect at Issquared, longtime contributor to this space, and longtime in the technology field. A great person to have on the show and a great person to know and to be friends and colleagues with. Thank you for everything you do and the particular energy you do bring to things and all the emphasis on empathy, which I love, and share your enthusiasm for how important that is. Thank you for all that. And I look forward to the next time we can be in the same physical place together, and some conference coming up, I'm sure this year we'll cross paths.
I am absolutely sure we'll cross paths. And we didn't really get into any of the skills or the technical capabilities that I have, and maybe I could become a guest again, and we can talk about where we need to go in direction in the industry. So
let's
Derek,
do it. Let's do it.
Absolutely wonderful being on your show, and I think that we need more thought leadership relative to direction. The industry is moving along, but I think we need to be able to move along at a faster pace from the perspective of really getting to true enterprise security solutions for both operations and for information technology.
I think let's follow up with each other and do something on that. Whether it's because we can do, I want to broaden the podcast episode types this year, and so that wouldn't be bio. We've already done that. That'd be really going into something else. Let's do that.
Yeah, it would be fun. We could create a panel or something like that and get a lot of opinions going.
Love to.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Bye, Michelle.